Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're welcome to my channel, wherever you're joining me from. This is Hesworth for you. Today, I have a situation I want to share with you. It's regarding a lady named Shamima Begum. She was born in the United Kingdom. At the age of 15 in 2015, she and two other young girls left the UK to Syria. To join the Islamic State known as ISIS. Since then, Shamima has been in Syria. In 2019, she was found in the detention camp in Syria pregnant. And that same year, the British government stripped her of her citizenship. And since then, she's been actually fighting to regain it. So I want to show you a video which I want you to watch, just to show you how the British public feel. So let's go and watch these two videos.
Now, Shamima Begum will today find out if she can come back to the UK. A court is deciding today if she has won her appeal against the government's decision to strip her of British citizenship.
Shamima fled from Britain aged 15 with two other girls and went into Syrian territory controlled by Islamic State. In 2021, she spoke to us directly from the camp she was living in then.
The reason I came to ISIS, to Syria, was not for any violent reasons, not because I wanted to be a terrorist. It was because I thought I was doing the right thing as a Muslim, and I did not want to hurt anyone, in Syria or anywhere else in the world.
The hearing is centred on whether she was a victim of trafficking or a committed extremist, and therefore a threat to the UK, which is why her citizenship was removed. So will she be allowed to return by the courts today? Former Chief Superintendent Dal Babu believes the ruling won't be the end of the case, whatever the outcome.
Former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram doesn't think Shamima Begum should be allowed to come back.
And we're also joined by Jonathan Hall, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation. Can I just start with you, Jonathan, as the a Casey, very experienced lawyer, an expert in these matters, just to understand, if Shamima wins the appeal today, is that the end of the story, or will there be further legal cases to come? Will there be a further appeal? And if she were to return to the UK as a British citizen, does that mean that she is then free, or will she then be prosecuted in the UK as a UK citizen for potentially the offences that she has committed, including excusing or glorifying the Manchester bombing?
Yeah, this is stage one. So if she won her appeal and her citizenship was restored, that doesn't mean that she could come out of the camp, because the position of the UK government has been that even British citizens, they can't come out of the camp unless the government is prepared to help them, what lawyers call give them consular assistance. And there have been quite a few cases actually where British citizens who've never been deprived have been asking to leave, and the government has said, no, we're not prepared to give you the help to leave. So this is stage one. The next question is, would they give her assistance to leave? And the current position of the government is, I suspect, no. But let's imagine that she did somehow manage to get back to the UK. I'm pretty sure that prosecution is not, if you like, the first line of defence in terms of managing any risk. It's really hard in the UK system because we have conspicuously fair trials. Our laws weren't really adapted to deal with people like Shamima Begum. So it's possible that she could be prosecuted for some of the things that she said on television, some of the things that she said to you. But I think that in the main, it's unlikely that many people are going to be prosecuted. And then if she couldn't be prosecuted, in principle, there are some civil orders that could be made. So there's an order called a temporary exclusion order, which would require her to come back on a particular plane, require her, when she'd come back, to report to the authorities and to register her address. So there are some ways of managing the risk. And no doubt there'd also be other sort of monitoring in the background as well.
I mean, Jonathan, before we get into the nitty-gritty of that detail, which kind of is sometimes a bit overwhelming for people to
Yeah.
take in. You're in the steep in it. I suppose the legal situation and the fear might be for the government that if they bring her back and she does face prosecution and for whatever reason doesn't get convicted, that feels like a nerve-wracking position for those that are convinced that she did wrong by being there, whatever her age. And that means that it would be a very bad example. But what needs to be done legally otherwise? Can she just be left there?
I agree. I mean, there are two things on there. I mean, personally, my blood boils about what people did when they joined Islamic State. So there is a genuine need for accountability. Again, we haven't got a great record of this. The Germans and the Swedes are very good at, for example, prosecuting people for war crimes. So even if you can't prosecute someone for being involved in terrorism, were they involved in mistreating Yazidi people, for example? Were they occupying the houses of people who they'd thrown out during the conquest? So there's the accountability piece. Then there's the risk piece. But I think you do need to look at Shamima Begum's case in a wider context, which is whatever happens in her case, a lot of European countries are now bringing back people. The Americans are putting a huge amount of pressure to try and bring these camps to an end on the basis that they are just going to incubate the next version of Islamic State. And the Germans have brought back about 100, the French have brought back well over 100. And increasingly, there's going to be pressure on the UK to do the same. So I think the answer is you've got to watch this space. You will find more and more pressure, not simply on the basis of humanitarian concerns. And there are children there who are in an appalling position, and they are completely blameless, but also because as a matter of sort of realpolitik, the UK is going to have to start taking its share, I suspect. So there are some really tricky decisions coming down the line for the government.
Dal, you know the family, you have worked with them closely. There's a wider implication for all society, but you're looking at this in a sense as an individual, aren't you? You're looking at it at an individual girl, that's what the family feel it is, who made some mistakes at 15, who now regrets them, and is fundamentally a British citizen, albeit she's had that stripped. Do you think there is enough public sympathy? Because we've had lots of comments this morning, and most of them, got to be honest, very negative, don't bring her back. How did that change, in your view, the position that people have on her?
Well, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think Jonathan gave an excellent summary there of where we are and the complexity of this situation. We have to remember that she was 19 when she was interviewed. She said some very foolish things.
But this was particularly about the bombing of the Manchester Arena.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was a very, very foolish thing to say, to liken the Manchester Arena atrocity.
She said she could understand the justification for it, just to be really clear, didn't she, when she was 19?
Yeah. And all of us would have been shocked that somebody was prepared to say that they can understand innocent people being bombed in Manchester. It was a shocking thing to say. Shamima went on to talk about heads being in bins and she wasn't fazed. But we have to remember she was a 19-year-old girl. She was 19. She was 9 months pregnant. She's lost 3 children. Would we have allowed a 19-year-old who's 9 months pregnant to be interviewed? And we have to remember the guards there were in control of absolutely everything that was happening there. And quite frankly, she's going to find it very, very difficult for the public to be sympathetic to her after having made that interview. It's going to be incredibly challenging.
Let's go to Philip Ingram, who is a former senior British military intelligence officer. There is clearly a potential security threat if Shamima Begum comes back to the UK. That is what the government is worried about. That's why they are not wanting to give her citizenship. The Independent Terrorism Advisor just said there is also a security threat if they continue with people in these camps. She's currently in a camp in Syria, which he said is potential training ground for extremism. How do you think about the balance of risks? What would you advise the government to do?
Well, I think the risk of her being re-radicalised in the Syrian camps is a risk then in Syria and where there is a continuing terrorist problem. The risk of her coming back here is a risk to the population of the UK. And it's the message that sends out to other potential terrorists who could rally around the flag. I think we've got a moral balance here, and Bao brought it out perfectly well, in that she made a mistake when she was 15. She's made another mistake when she was 19, that he's just said. She's like a chameleon. She changes her story at every opportunity to see who will get some sympathy. If she's brought back here, we will have to spend a fortune in taxpayers' money potentially prosecuting her. If that fails, or when she's released from prison, if she gets into prison, we'll have to spend a fortune monitoring her as a potential threat. And if we have to put physical observation behind her, which for some period of time we probably will, that will dilute the very overstretched assets that we've got trying to keep us safe at the moment, and will cost the taxpayer in excess of £1 million a year. Now, I would far rather, in the moral dilemma, have that £1 million and the other millions that would go in legal cases go to pay our police a little bit more, to pay our nurses a little bit more, to pay our doctors a little bit more, to pay our teachers a little bit more, rather than being wasted on an individual who, yes, she's made bad choices, but she knew what she was doing.
Jonathan, modern slavery laws to protect trafficking, because she's being claimed as a trafficker, does that mean that it's very hard for this appeal not to be found, that basically she ultimately will have to come back? Does that impact on things?
We'll have to see. I don't believe that she gave evidence. So I think that the government's position is going to be one, look at the facts. She didn't give evidence, so how could a court say that she has in fact been trafficked? And I suspect they'll be saying, well, she's adopting a convenient defence. We'll have to see what the judge says about that. It's a factual matter really rather than a legal matter. And in any event, I think the government will be pointing to the question of risk. Just addressing what Philip was saying there, he's really right. And I think there is a really strong point here that, money will have to be spent on people who come back from Syria. On the other hand, nothing is completely cost-free. And let's just imagine that all Europeans came back from the camps, and the only country that kept their people in the camps were the British. You can very quickly imagine the sort of arguments, Britain's Guantanamo, etc. The UK already pays money to the Syrian Defence Force to guard the camps and contributes to those camps. So there is a cost there, I think, of not acting. And Philip may be right. It may be right that at the moment, it's best to keep people away because there's plenty of other threats to the system. There's a lot of hostile state activity at the moment. There are other terrorist threats. And he's completely right about the costs of monitoring. But I would also be a bit cautious about suggesting that the UK system can't absorb that sort of risk. We do have very good authorities, are very good at managing quite complex and challenging risks.
So where we are, Philip has made it clear that he thinks she shouldn't return. Jonathan, I think you're saying that the courts have to decide, but you, on balance, would have her return.
Yes, I think you're fair to ask me that question. I found this really hard, and I'm doing a detailed speech at the end of the month where I set out all the arguments. But I do think, on balance, the women and children in particular, and children's my real focus, need to be brought back in a controlled way.
Well, do you think she'll come back or not?
I think that the law will say that she'll come back. I think the difficulty is going to be, what do you do with these people long term? You've got children there who have gone there. She was 15.
Think she should come back?
Well, she's 15. We have to. The law will see where we are. But I think it's very, very difficult to see how she will not have the opportunity to come back.
I think that was a yes.
No, I'm definitely saying yes. But right. I think the key thing, as Jonathan has said, children have gone in there and they're the innocents.
I'll be taking us to the next video where you hear what the outcome today was in court.
Some breaking news. We are just hearing that Shamima Begum has lost her appeal against the removal of her UK citizenship. This is a woman who, at the age of 15, in 2015, left the UK and travelled to Syria to join the Islamic State group. And she was stripped of her British citizenship by the Home Secretary at the time, Sajid Javid, because of her involvement with the extremist group. She has appealed against having her citizenship stripped, but she has now lost that appeal. Let's speak to Anthony Glees, a security expert from the University of Buckingham, thank you very much for joining us this morning. To what extent was this what you expected the decision to be?
Well, it is very much what I expected the decision to be, and I hope it sort of settles the matter. This is, of course, a tragedy for Shamima, but it is also much more of a tragedy for all the people who lost their lives at the hands of the brutal, sadistic, so-called Islamic State, whom she supported. It's also a question of politics. What would have been the implications if she had been allowed to come back to the UK and regained her citizenship? She wasn't the only person who'd been stripped of her citizenship. About 150 people, we're told, have also been stripped of their citizenship. All of them would have appealed, and had she come back to the United Kingdom, whatever her own views were, she would have been treated as an icon by Islamists in the United Kingdom. So I'm not surprised. The politics of it were wrong, but the bottom line is this is the law, and we, all of us, believe in lawfulness. The government has been found not to have broken the law. As I say, I'm not surprised, and I think we should now draw a line under the matter of Shamima Begum.
So that is a situation that the government is facing, and we're facing in the UK. What do you think? Do you think she should be allowed back to the country, knowing that she was only 15 when she was maybe brainwashed, or online, and according to what she said, and then left with these two other young girls? What was she doing from 2015 to 2019 when she was found pregnant? I sometimes wonder, okay, why didn't she cry out for help at that point? Then you also have to bear in mind that when they're in that camp, it's very risky for them to try to leave. According to the research I made, I find out, rather, that they were actually married out. They were all married at that young age to ISIS members. Is she still with the guy she was married to, or she's married at that time? Are they still together? Or if she's allowed to come to the UK, will she at a certain point say, well, I need my husband to come? What will happen? Is the person she had a child for still a member of ISIS? So those are just questions that kind of just go through my mind. What do you think? And I feel so sorry for her, such compassion at that age to have lost 3 children. That's a trauma for her. But then on the other hand, you want to also look at the fact that if they allow her into the country, she might radicalize others. Because in 2019, when she was interviewed, she said that she understood why the people that actually these ISIS guys that attacks in Manchester, she understood why they did what they did. So it's like she believes, there's some belief there. I get these people, I know why they do what they do. Will she at that point now go do something that could hurt the country? Because if she's allowed in and she happened to hurt the country or radicalize other people, guess what? The government is going to be blamed for it, for allowing her back into the country. I think at this point, the government think, okay, where she's at, we're spending money there to keep them there, to keep her with others, we're fine. She's not in the country, so she's not so much at risk. Then you talk about the children they are bringing up as well in that environment, that those children are going to learn something that might not be helpful for their future. Also, it's such a complicated case because you feel for her in a way, just as 15-year-olds making such a drastic and very implicating decision. And today, the court has rejected her appeal. I mean, they said, no, we're not giving you back your citizenship. So that's going to be very devastating for her. So what is your thought? Do you think the government should allow her in, or should they just leave her where she is? Or should go look for a different citizenship? Some say, well, her parents are from Bangladesh, she should go there and get the citizenship from there, you know, or you think she should just settle in Syria, find a life, and move on from there. So what is your what is your take on it? Leave us a comment, and then we could just oh, you know, it's a hard place for her. It's a very, very hard place for her. I know that the government want to protect their citizenship. I mean, sorry, their citizens, and giving her citizenship might be risky for the country. That is well understood. But at the same time, the state where she is, where she lives, is really, really it's not the best place for her to be. So let me know what you think, and leave us a comment. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the notification button so that when we are honest, you will be one of the first people to know. Thank you so much for joining me, and you have a wonderful day.